Welcome to another World Heritage video, and what I'm doing is I'm going to do this video in two parts. I'm looking at the Stonehenge, Avebury and other associated ancient monuments World Heritage Site, and today what I'm going to do is look over the Avebury section of the site. I'm on top of Windmill Hill, sitting on top of one of the barrows that's at this site. Windmill Hill is the oldest part of the Avebury section of the World Heritage Site. It dates back to about 3650 BC, and we know this partly because of some of the early Neolithic pottery found here, but also from radiocarbon dating of some of the organic remains, in particular the remains of a child about 8 years old that was found here on this site during one of the excavations. So just to put things into comparison, 3650 BC, it's almost 5,500, well over 5,500 years ago. That is more than 1,500 years before the main construction that everybody thinks of at Stonehenge, and a good 1,500 years before the construction of the Great Pyramids at Giza. So this makes this a really ancient site, one of the oldest sites in the UK. Now, Windmill Hill site itself is what's known as a causeway enclosure, and what this means is that there are, in the case of Windmill Hill, there are 3 consecutive circular banks and ditches, each with a causeway, hence the name causeway enclosure, each with an opening in these ditches and banks, providing access to the inner sections of the circles. There are also several barrow mounds, one of which I'm stood on here, that we use as burial sites. Now, we're not sure of exactly the function of Windmill Hill. You're going to get that phrase a lot with this video. We're not sure about the function. We know that people came here to feast and to celebrate because there's the remains of a lot of animal bones, from cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, all from here. So this seems to be the gathering point for the slaughtering of animals, at least. We know there were quite a few burials here of human remains, along with the remains of early pottery, Neolithic pottery. But other than that, we really don't know too much about what this site was used for. Contemporary to Windmill Hill is one of the best preserved barrows in the Avebury area, and it's the West Kennet Long Barrow. The barrow itself is approximately 100 metres long and is a chambered burial space known as a Cotswold Severn tomb because of the similarities of other tombs within the Cotswolds and the Severn River Valley. The tomb itself sits quite prominently on top of a hill and has several blocking stones in front of the entrance. Now, these blocking stones weren't used to prevent access permanently. The relationship of the Neolithic people with their dead is a very different one to one that we are familiar with now. West Kennet Long Barrow contained the remains of at least 46 individuals. However, they weren't just neatly arranged as skeletons, as we would expect in a contemporary grave. The Neolithic people, and we've noticed this from not just West Kennet but other places such as the Orkney Islands, the dead were not just left to rot away in the barrows. They were brought out as disarticulated remains on several occasions. For what purpose, we're not sure. We have no contemporary reference to what the Neolithic people were doing with these bodies. Obviously it was in some sort of ceremonial sense, whether it was religious, whether it was ancestral worship,
whether it was a veneration of the society's connection with that place and that land. All of that is up for speculation. But we know that they were removed on several occasions, and that the bones, when they were placed back, weren't always placed back in the same place or together with the original skeleton. So you end up with places that have got multiple skulls, others that have got multiple limb bones, etc, etc. And one of the interesting things that has been noticed in the Avebury area is that there are several long barrows, or the remains of several long barrows, West Kennet being the best preserved one, and that the bones from several individuals have been scattered amongst several barrows. So it looks like they were even sharing the remains of certain individuals between different locations and possibly different groups of people. So part of the West Kennet Long Barrow is actually open to the public. You can enter the barrow and explore some of the chambers. The passage goes on for about 20 metres. Beyond that, parts of the tunnels have collapsed as well, so you can't proceed any further than there. Now, there are several long barrows within the Avebury area, and all of these are from the Neolithic period. There are also dozens and dozens of circular barrows, as shown on the map here, and these are some of the barrows that were found at the Windmill hillside. These aren't actually Neolithic barrows, these are early Bronze Age barrows, so several centuries later.
So I'm here now inside the stone circle at Avebury itself. Now, everybody thinks Stonehenge is actually the largest stone circle in the world. Truth is, it's not even in the top 3. It's actually this one, it's Avebury. In fact, the Avebury Hendge and circle is so large that the part of the village of Avebury is actually situated inside the circle itself. Now, the Avebury monument is split into a couple of different categories. First off, there is the henge. Now, just to clarify, the henge isn't the stones. The henge is actually the wall and ditch surrounding the whole site. The henge at Avebury was the first part constructed in the site, and is thought to have been constructed somewhere around about 3000 BC. The henge is not quite circular and is about 347 metres in diameter and roughly 1,000 metres in circumference. Now, inside the henge, there's not one but 3 stone circles, the remains of which 2 can still be seen today. Now, there's the big perimeter outer circle, which is made from the local sarsen sandstone and is 331 metres in diameter. And it's thought that this was constructed somewhere in about 2,500 BC, so 4,500 years ago. Inside this stone circle are 2 other small stone circles. The northern one's about 198 metres across, and the southern ring is about 108 metres in diameter. You can't see much in the way of the northern one anymore. A lot of it was built over, and to be honest, the southern circle, there's not a lot left either. And it was originally thought that there were several hundred stones making up all 3 of the stone circles. And up until about 400 or 500 years ago, most of these were still in place. During the Puritan era, a lot of these stones were torn down because they were seen as being the work of the devil and thought to represent old pagan ceremonies, and were very, very un-Christian. So they were torn down, and a lot of them were broken up and used for building purposes for the village. One of these stones, although this was prior to the Puritan era, this was 1300s, when it was torn down, actually fell on top of somebody, and the skeleton was found in excavations in the 1920s. As for the purpose of the henge and the circle, nobody's sure is the honest answer. It's thought that with the amount of work that was needed to create something like this, with not just the henge but also the moving of the stones and setting them upright. I mean, some of these stones are absolutely flipping huge. Obviously, this place held some sort of significance for the people that built it, but whether that was ritual, whether that was religious, ceremonial, administrative, nobody's really sure at all.
Contemporary to the Avebury Stone Circle is what's known as the West Kennet Avenue. Now, this is a procession of over 100 pairs of stones, marking out a path that's 2.4 kilometres long from Avebury Stone Circle, south-southeast towards Overton Hill, where the sanctuary sits. Now, the West Kennet Avenue, we don't really know the purpose beyond the fact that it appears to be a ceremonial procession way that takes people from Avebury Stone Circle to the sanctuary, or vice versa. The sanctuary at Overton Hill actually sits at a higher position than the Avebury Stone Circle and looks over a lot of the landscape. Similar to the other features in this landscape, we really don't know the true purpose behind what the sanctuary was used for. Originally, it was a couple of concentric circles made out of wooden posts, and then later the Bronze Age people in the area added several circles made out of small stone pillars. The stones weren't anywhere near as big as those found at Avebury, nor was the circle anywhere near approaching the size. It was similar in size more to the inner circles at Avebury as opposed to the large stone circle. I'm going to finish today's video with Silbury Hill. And Silbury Hill is by far the biggest single monument at the Avebury site. The hill itself is an artificial earth mound. It's not a natural structure, and it's the tallest human-made prehistoric mound anywhere within Europe. The Silbury Hill is about 40 metres high and approximately 160 metres across at the base, and contains nearly 1/3 cubic metres of chalk. So again, this structure, when it was first built, probably would have been quite bright white and would have stood in stark contrast to the dark green of the forest and agricultural landscape that it dominated. Although the hill looks very circular today, it originally wasn't. It turns out that it was actually 9-sided, and its more circular shape today is the result of over 4,000 years of erosion. It was originally thought that the hill might have been a burial mound, and because of this, they've actually done excavations into the centre of the hill on 3 separate occasions. Now, they haven't found anything inside the hill. Turns out that it was not a burial mound at all. So, again, like so much of the rest of the site, we really don't have too much information about the true purpose of this artificial hill.